Should we start?
Yes, Kavita, we are live.
Thanks, Meenakshi. A very good evening to everyone. My name is Kavita Sharma, as you all know, and on behalf of WRI-India, I welcome you all to the virtual launch ceremony of Harit Bharat Fund. We are extremely delighted to launch this fund today with our esteemed program partners from the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India, Manthan, India Climate Collaborative, Spectrum Impact, Sangam, Transform Rural India Foundation, Pune Knowledge Cluster, who have played an instrumental role in co-creating this ambitious fund. This event starts with the introduction of the Harit Bharat Fund and will advance to a panel discussion with our core program partners, followed by a 30-minute annex session giving an overview of the expression of interest launched today for inviting applicants to access the Harit Bharat Fund. Moving ahead, once again, I extend a very warm welcome to everyone for joining this launch webinar. To begin with the launch, I would like to invite Sean Devitt, Director, Global Restoration Initiative at World Resources Institute, to introduce the Harit Bharat Fund and highlight the pivotal role played by each of the incredible partners in shaping up this ambitious initiative.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kavita. And welcome everyone to the launch of the Harit Bharat Fund. This is a very exciting time. What is the fund? I think of it as equal parts ambitious and collaborative. As Kavita said, there's an incredible group of partners, both that are supporting the initiative and that are driving the initiative. And we look forward to discussing more today. One of the things that we really like about restoration and why are we investing so much in restoration is that it does deliver benefits in each of the areas that you see on the screen here. It's about people. It's about creating jobs. It's about livelihoods. It's about improving the lives of smallholder farmers and folks living in rural areas. But it also can help to build their resilience. But equally, it's about nature. Nature, the life system that we rely on for all of our supports, for our economies, for our lives, for our culture. So this could, with restoration, we can improve the flow of ecosystem services, water. We can improve our soils, our biodiversity, and our air quality. And at the same time, it's about climate, mitigating climate risks, becoming more resilient to the shocks that we're increasingly seeing from climate change. And last but not least, carbon sequestration. Now, what kinds of restoration are we talking about? What is Harit Bharat going to support? And this is one of my favorite things. You see the diversity of different types of restoration that it will support on the screen here. And what I really like about the fund is that it's going to be an open call for proposals. And so this isn't a project where we're asking, folks that are closest to the ground to join the project. We're asking folks that are closest to the ground to tell us what they want to do. What's needed in their rural areas, right? What is needed to restore their areas? And it's everything you see here from sustainable agriculture, mixed species plantation, pastures, agri-hortiforestry models, farmer managed natural regeneration. It's quite a mix. And what we like about the open call for proposals is we're saying, what do you need, right? What is needed where you are? We want to support that. We want you to be the designers, the architects of these local solutions. And we, all of us, want to rally around with the support that's needed from a technical perspective, from a financial perspective, and from a moral perspective, connecting folks that are peers, folks creating a community of practice that are doing restoration around the 3 states that we're launching in Maharashtra, in MP, and Chhattisgarh, to restore those lands. And why create a fund? There's lots of funds in India, but what we find, and we've seen this globally too, is that there's a bit of a missing middle. And what we find is that a lot of restoration initiatives, they're too big for microfinance, but they're too small for impact investment. And this is a pretty big gap. We estimate that globally that gap is about $20 billion US for these kinds of restoration champions that are doing the types of restoration you saw on the last slide. And who are these organizations? Some are nonprofits, right? Some are community-based nonprofits that are restoring land. Others are enterprises. They're for-profits that are finding ways to earn revenue, be sustainable, viable businesses while restoring land. So it is both. And we do target both. And we're really excited that we have some experience doing this. So this is not our first time doing this. worked with 12 donors in Africa to put together a large fund. Our first round was 15 million US dollars. Our second round is significantly larger. And we funded 100 organizations across 27 African countries. 80 of those were nonprofits, those community-based organizations I mentioned. 20 of them were for-profits. The nonprofits received a grant, the for-profits received a loan. There's now 6 million trees that are in the ground and growing, with about the same amount going in the ground as we speak. 25,000 livelihoods improved, 15,000 hectares under restoration. And I'm happy to say that we're just finishing our next round. We're focused just on 3 landscapes this time. We realized that we maybe spread our impact a little bit too thin our first time. We want to concentrate on just 3 landscapes, and we're funding another somewhere between 85 and 100, it looks like, organizations in the next couple of months in the Ghana Cocoa Belt, in the Great Rift Valley of Kenya, and in the Lake Kivu and Rusizi River Basin of Rwanda, Burundi, and DRC. And so Harit Bharat builds on this experience, adapts it to the Indian environment. And again, it is this very collaborative initiative. It's a coalition of donors and investors supporting a coalition of actors, each of whom have their own strengths they're bringing to the table to finance and capacitate locally led startups, farmer producer organizations, non-governmental organizations that are restoring India's iconic landscapes. Again, the for-profits will receive the loans, the nonprofits will receive grants. They can request between 25,000 USD, 20 lakhs, to 300,000 USD, 2.5 crore. The applications are invited through Manthan and through TerraMatch, the central application and monitoring systems that we will use. The fund provides a customized one-on-one mentorship and capacity building. So it's not just about money, it's about capacity building. And it's also about community building. As I said, these projects will network with peers, with philanthropies, investors, technical experts, government leaders, investors. And so we're really excited that today we'll start the process of allowing people to apply. From there, we'll screen those applications. There'll be another round where this is just an expression of interest round. The next round will be full proposals. From there, we'll select. We'll negotiate with folks. We'll fund them. Then we'll implement and support and deliver that capacity building we were talking about at the same time. And then we'll verify those results. And so we're incredibly excited and grateful for the support from in particular, the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office of the Government of India. As I mentioned, applications will be available through the Manthan platform. This will allow us to connect with industry-wide experts, mentors, and provide support in creating a larger collaborative environment for landscape restoration. In particular, I want to thank Dr. Sapnapoti for her support, and also the support from Rahul Kothreshta from the PSA's office. I want to give a special thanks to Spectrum Impact and to Mirat Godri for enabling the building of the restoration economy here by supporting locally led restoration enterprises. AKO Foundation has been an anchor supporter for us in Africa and in India. I want to thank my colleagues in WRI-India. I want to thank the India Climate Collaborative for advising and supporting domestic philanthropic support for landscape restoration. We have a nice balance of international and domestic support for the initiative. Sangam, a longstanding partner of our Land Accelerator for South Asia, will be supporting debt finance and helping to build capacity. Transforming Rural India for supporting and building the enabling ecosystem work in the 3 states that I mentioned. And last but not least, the Pune Knowledge Cluster for the critical role that it will play in helping to monitor the progress for selected local restoration initiatives. In closing, we have a really exciting program for you today. I want to thank you for your time. We know you're very busy. We want to invite each of you to join us on this highly collaborative journey together to help restore India's iconic landscapes. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Kavita. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean, for explaining the nature and ambition of Harit Bharat Fund. This must have charged the applicants, some of whom are also attending this webinar, to apply for Harit Bharat Fund. Taking forward this exciting session, I would now like to invite Dr. Ruchika Singh, Director, Sustainable Landscapes and Restoration, WRI-India, for setting up the context for restoring land and prosperity for people, nature, and climate in Central India.
Thanks, Kavita, and welcome everyone to the launch of Harit Bharat Fund. I'll just pick it from where Sean left. And I think the point that Sean was emphasizing in terms of one of our collective learnings, and this is also for all our partners who are part of this, has been key to successful projects is how local communities are involved, how they are steering, projects which are designed locally, which takes into consideration diverse sort of stakeholder inputs, but also complexities that are there on the ground. We know that, there are community-based organizations, farmer producer organizations, businesses who are working with farmers, forest-dependent population, all to mitigate impact of climate change, but also build resilience. How do we provide them the right kind of support? What are the gaps that we are seeing in the system in terms of resources, capacity, which is a huge one? How do we monitor? All those are the issues that we want to look very closely, and which led to the design of this work, because how do we sort of hear and listen to locally led restoration is essentially what we're looking at. To give you an example of Vena Farmer Producer Company, where this is a land accelerator alumni, and what we've learned from working with Vena has been that a lot of these small farmer producer companies, and we also have Namrata who's going to talk about her experience later, is Vena works on doing value addition, promoting bamboo cultivation. They work with different farmers, youth, including women farmers, and their focus has been on creating the business models which could help in creating, biochar, in bio oil, but also through nursery development, etc. But they've had challenges along the way in terms of how to raise the right kind of funding, how to think about challenges in terms of accessing institutional finance, which is needed because the collaterals are quite high. And that's where our focus and learning has brought us from also some of the companies that we've seen, 1,000 plus that have applied to the Land Accelerator South Asia in the last 4 years, that the industry is fragmented with small enterprises. The business models are unproven. Scaling in early stage is difficult. So how do we support some of these businesses with the right capacity, but also finance, which is not just about, what they need is patient capital. So how do we sort of help them with some of these finance, which could help in building the larger restoration economy and unlock different multiple benefits that can flow. For instance, in terms of course, food nutritional security, depending on the kind of interventions that are being done, or biodiversity benefits, etc. So how do we move towards that becomes important. And I think that's where the Harit Bharat Fund is targeting these early stage businesses in 3 key geographies, as Sean mentioned, of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Maharashtra. These 3 states have very high restoration potential, but also they are quite climate vulnerable when we think about the climate impacts that is currently happening. These states have a lot of Adivasi population. I'm not going to get into the numbers, but if we look at, from in context of Adivasi or Dalit population in some of these states, but also the multidimensional poverty index numbers. But if we also look at the cohort of different business enterprises who've applied from this region, this seems like a region as a good region initially to start with. And that's where our focus initially is on how do we focus on systems change, where essentially it's a 3-pronged approach with partners. Next slide, where we are looking at developing restoration strategies using a landscape approach. It's about having the best available science, thinking about how we restore lands for mitigating climate impacts, as I said, food, nutritional security. So essentially, it's really about thinking about competing in complementary priorities that may be in a landscape, from conservation, production, and economic development. And how do we use data to identify what those priorities could be? How do we think about reorienting existing incentives, including public funding? And how can that be synergistically deployed for land restoration on the ground? And how some of this philanthropic catalytic fund could support scaling up, essentially, or reducing the barriers? And thinking through in terms of, lot of channeling of finance, but also mobilization, activation. How do we convene, learn from each other, build better monitoring capacities, bridge the capacity gaps? And that's the larger focus that we have today. And with that, I would like to pass it back to my colleague, Kavita.
Thank you, Ruchika. Thanks for explaining the overall framework of creating the enabling ecosystem for the restoration businesses in the 3 states. And moving further, we are honored and privileged to have with us Dr. Sapna Poti, Director, Strategic Alliances, Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India. Honorable Dr. Sapna Poti carries with herself an immense experience of almost 3 decades in both public and private industry and in government consulting for designing, implementing, and scaling up social innovations. At present, with the government, she leads the promotion of scientific research and development and innovations by setting up centers of excellence supporting innovation clusters for social impact. She has also played a vital role to promote development of Manthan, India's platform for research and innovation for collaborations at scale across industry and academia. I would like to invite her for sharing with us her keynote address.
Thank you. I don't have slides as usual. I prefer to have a conversation. And it's really delightful to again partner with WRI on Harit Bharat Fund. I think Dr. Singh as well as Dr. Pai have been extremely supportive of all the work that Office of PSA has been undertaking so far. And hence this partnership is going to be for a long association. I think I don't need to preach to the priest here, but as you know, we are at about 1.4 billion, which is the highest today as ranking number 1 in the world as population. However, we have just about 3% of the land of the entire world's surface, which is itself a big challenge. In addition to that, we have taken up targets like the carbon sink for about 3 million tons by 2030, UNCCD, G20, all of them, we've been discussing several issues on land restoration and climate action and so on, and taken up targets which we need to meet. In addition to that, we have several stakeholders and each stakeholder has their own agenda. For instance, we need to look at development, and hence the government has a focus on how do we look after the urban and rural development and yet maintain this entire forest coverage and so on, and the balance between the two. Communities are more interested in livelihood. So they naturally have, they're quite clueless on how to manage livelihood as well as the forest balancing, and which is where folks like us need to support them. And then, of course, we have community leaders who want, equality in each of these stakeholders and so on. However, problems we have several, usually in any country or worldwide, but globally, we need to look at solutions. And that's what India has done quite well as well. When we look at stakeholders like the government has the Green Mission, the National Afforestation, and so on. In addition to that, there's a very interesting, and I think it's one of the most interesting concept of land restoration through MG-NREGA. Which also seems to be that it could be a global best practice, and UNCCD is interested in taking that forward. Monitoring and evaluation is also very closely done. Of course, we have World Earth Watch and their data that is an input for India. In addition to that, state governments are also working on several of these issues. Delhi government, as you know, has been monitoring as well as providing the engagement to the citizens so that people could get into tree plantation and so on. However, as the data suggests, 32% is higher carbon storage is through land restoration, forest restoration, and so on, than planting of trees. So hence, it's a complex issue that we are trying to solve. The most interesting and what thrills me is the kind of work our clusters, our academic institutes, and our startups have been undertaking across the nation on addressing this issue, largely using technologies, using innovations, and so on, in a variety and varied, diverse points and issues. Like you have the geographical information system, GIS, you have remote sensing for the data, we have big data analytics where we are looking at crunching data, mining data, and then providing the solutions as per that. Using AI and ML again for data crunching and trends and so on. Blockchain is being used today for tracking supply chain because the value chain as well as the supply chain of a product today is also very important to be monitored and evaluated on a regular basis. There are several mobile apps, cloud tools that are being used by these startups, as well as some of the industries mentoring them. Community engagement platforms again is very important, and I'm happy that you are also engaging NGOs as well as civil societies in your program. We have, of course, climate modeling, as you're aware, air pollution technologies, and so on. So I can go on and on. There are several technologies, like I said, from an entire spectrum. What's interesting is that while we have all these technologies, we actually do not have one platform where we could house these innovations and all these stakeholders, and they could seamlessly engage with each other. And that's how we thought of Manthan, and it's my personal architecture. We've done benchmarked about 15 Indian as well as worldwide platforms before we decided that there is no duplication of efforts here. Manthan, as you know, is where you have several stakeholders and in different areas. It's not limited to land restoration or climate action. It has all the 17 SDGs. It also has several emerging technologies, 20 of them at this juncture. And for each of these, we have different stakeholders, the demand and the supply side, engaging with each other on this platform. On the demand side, we have multilaterals, we have our own government, we have different governments from about 15 other countries. We have line ministries and high net worth income people, and all of them together. In fact, this platform itself is a crowdsourced funded platform, and now it is owned by the Office of the PSA and maintained by the office. On the supply side, we have several startups, about 85,000 of them, and about 500 incubators with 5,000 institutes, as well as grassroots innovators. We do not differentiate between premier institutes and grassroots innovators, because some of the best innovations also come from grassroots. And we also have civil societies, NGOs. So there's a space for every stakeholder who wants to meaningfully work on science and technology and make a social impact. So that's one thing for you. We have set up about 15 centers of excellence using this platform, right from sanitation in IIT Palakkad, where we have funding partners like Gates Foundation. Bill Gates himself came to meet the PSA, as well as the team to ensure that he gives support to this center of excellence. We have SDFC Bank, ICMO, Toilet Board Coalition, which is USAID, HUL, etc. together. Funding this particular center of excellence. We also have a center of excellence in IIT Dharwad, which is basically focusing on clean tech and renewable energy with Selco Foundation, Honeywell, Infineon, and so on. Terry has, through ICICI Securities, a center of excellence on circular economy. We have one on in NIT Patna on AI and ML, and as well as in the Institute of Science. So we have set up these 15 centers of excellence, and I urge WRI as well as their partners to look at how you could look at having a center of excellence, housing some of these technologies, especially when it comes to scalability of these startups. So there are 3 or 4 pillars which are very important in a center of excellence. One is the R&D and pre-incubation pillar, which looks at all the technologies which are relevant to that particular thematic area. Second is to have cohorts of startups. That's the second pillar. And to develop them, to incubate them, mentor them, and so on. The third is to do, undertake pilots on the ground, which are small, large scale, depending on the technologies which need to go to that level. And then finally scale up through either market research or through market support or through the government and so on. In this particular center of excellence, one needs to have governing council members, and these are largely from line ministries as well as from experts of different academic institutes. So together, the governing council manages the center of excellence. So that tomorrow the innovations do not face challenges in terms of policies making and so on. So that is the entire spectrum of a center of excellence. And hence hopefully WRI would think of something like that using the Harit Bharat Fund, and also partner with the National Research Fund. And that's the other new element that the government has focus on research and development. And hence I invite WRI to take this up as well. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Koti. We do look forward to collaborating with both Manthan and the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor for making these technologies accessible to the landscape restoration practitioners. We are incredibly thankful to you for gracing this launch ceremony with your presence and deeply acknowledge your guidance and support in launching the Harit Bharat Fund. Now let's move forward to the next highlight of this launch session, the discussion with our partners on accelerating a restoration economy for people, nature, and climate in India. I would now like to invite Mr. Madhav Pai, Chief Executive Officer, WRI-India, for initiating and moderating this discussion by introducing the panelists who are our core partners in co-creating the Harit Bharat Fund. Over to you, Madhav.
Thank you, Kavita. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all of you. It's very exciting. I just saw that there were 365 participants listening to this webinar. So I think really great to see this interest and this excitement in the Harit Bharat Fund. I mean, broadly, I think, from everything that has been said so far, really this Harit Bharat Fund talks about 3 or 4 values, right? Locally led, technology leveraged, access to finance. But also one of the most important things is it's about being collaborative. It's about working in partnerships and each party or each partner doing what it does best, right? So with that, I think the idea of this sort of next 20-25 minutes of conversation is to really hear from each of these partners of, how they will bring their best, what they do best to this partnership or to this fund, right? So I'll start with Dr. Ajita Padi. Dr. Ajita Padi is a senior specialist at the India Climate Collaborative. She has decades of experience on climate change adaptation and policy and action groups. She's worked closely with CSOs, indigenous communities, think tanks, and local government. She's worked both at the local level, but also then representing this voice in international forums like the COPs. So starting with you, one is, what are your challenges and learnings of ICC that you think can help the design of that has enabled the design of this fund, and really also a little bit about how you see the ecosystem for the Indian philanthropic funding to come about and support scaling restoration in our country. So yeah.
Thanks, Madhav. Thanks for that question. I think the restoration landscape is evolving fast, and there are a few bright spots that give us a lot of confidence. When I look at the land use sector, we have seen how philanthropic funding has played a catalytic role in the Andhra Pradesh community managed natural farming, which apart from restoring degraded land has brought in livelihoods, incomes, and biodiversity benefits as well. So here, philanthropic capital has really set up the ecosystem for agroecological transition at scale for about 6 million farmers. And we are really at a stage where we are seeing more and more interest coming from philanthropies, both domestic and international funders. What we are also seeing is that philanthropic funding is coming as an ecosystem enabler. And let me explain that. For example, we are associated with a process called ARREST, which stands for Alliance for Reversing Ecosystem Services Threats, where philanthropic capital has really come in to build critical collaboration, just like this one, this Harit Bharat Fund, to bring think tanks, research institutions, and CSOs to develop what we call a scientific restoration roadmap for India. And it was a unique thing in itself. It continues to be. And this is also the role that ICC sees itself as playing with the Harit Bharat Fund as well. Coming on the challenges, I think, Madhav, challenges are many, and everybody in this room will resonate with it. But maybe I'd point just to 2 of them that we feel very strongly at the ICC. One is the lack of long-term commitment for restoration from donors and funders. And this is not surprising, I'm sure. And the second is the access to adequate and finance and capacities, like Ruchika also mentioned. Restoration timelines are typically long. Typically, they spread over 8 to 10 years. And with the current log frames, accounting system, reporting frameworks, of these donors and funders, we are not really geared towards such long-term ecological restoration initiatives. So that's kind of a challenge that is a bit restrictive, and there's thinking and discourse happening. How do we really kind of inform it better through outcomes that we want from restoration initiatives. Second, with respect to capacities, and that's a critical one. And we have seen at the ICC how there are challenges in undertaking scientific restoration, just not restoration, which could potentially lead to maladaptation in the future. And scientific restoration is typically complex, it's layered, identifying place-based, context-specific restoration solutions that not only meet the socioeconomic requirements of communities, but also meet their aspirations and address maladaptation in the long run. So that's the kind of challenge. And what Ruchika, again, I think I resonated when she said that there are capacity challenges with measurements, and everybody recognizes that, be it calculating, ecosystem services, calculating, growing up water budgets, or even quantifying biodiversity, more so microspecies diversity, carbon measurements for that matter. We are all struggling with it on the ground. So there's a whole range of capacity deficits, and we are really happy that and hopeful that Harit Bharat Fund will play a vital role in plugging these very critical capacity gaps. If that answers your question, Madhav.
No, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Excellent. I think it also sets me up for the next couple of questions. I think I'm going to talk to Mirik now. Mirik is the managing partner at Spectrum Impact. He also serves as the head of corporate strategy at Aarti Industries. Aarti Industries is a leading manufacturer of specialty chemicals and pharmaceuticals. In his day job, Mirik is passionate about research, technology, R&D. But, he believes and leads investing in cutting edge solutions to fight climate change. And Mirik, one is what inspires, you and Spectrum Impact to invest in innovative technology and enterprises that are building landscape restoration. But at the same time, you also heard from Ajita, the 8 to 10 year sort of window. And, so both, as so if you can just sort of, respond to that also from your perspective, your thinking as an investor in climate tech. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Madhav. So I think just some perspective, overall, to be frank, our approach has been a very deep tech investing approach in climate tech. So this land restoration understanding, and I'll sort of appreciate both the ICC as well as WRI for working with me over the past 6 months to get a better understanding on this. But we believe that there is a good cross section where some of the technologies can be applied at scale for even land restoration and things like that. And when we sort of try to understand it better, we realize that there are sort of scarcity funding in a ways, right? Where the missing middle that was mentioned in the earlier of the talk, that how can you have a slightly longer term vision? So the good thing is, because we have that longer term vision in deep tech, I think we were able to translate that into a longer term vision in funding or whatever, participating in this sort of fund, in rather than a very project based finance, but a more capacity building perspective. And I think what we sort of hope to do is, once some of the solutions that are identified and the applications come in, how can that be scaled? I think we always look at scale as a very important factor. Obviously, a lot of the livelihood problems and challenges are going to be very local in nature. So you need to scale them with a certain nuance of understanding what are the strengths and locality dependencies on them. But then how can you scale across not only these three states, right? I think we do not want to restrict some of those solutions to the 3 states being considered right now, but how can eventually those solutions after 3, 4, 5 years go even beyond that? So that's something that we feel is important. I think one more important thing that when we look at the global green transition overall, we feel it's a very big potential of wealth transfer in the world, as the livelihoods of local communities, as they are able to build their capacities and potentially participate in the broader global economy, whether it's a biochar and things like that, where they're effectively participating in the energy markets. So the thought process is that this is a very big wealth transfer that is possible, and how can we sort of act as catalytic funding to achieve that. We also have done something even in the bamboo ecosystem. So I am quite excited that was also mentioned in the earlier presentation, that the bamboo ecosystem is an important part of the whole thing. That's something where we have already put in sizable amount of capital. So we believe in the right mixture of philanthropic grants, debt capital and equity capital. And that's why this fund I am quite excited about, because it takes the debt capital as an important enabler, even for for-profit enterprises. So the philanthropic grants for the non-profits and the debt capital for the for-profits. Simultaneously, I think there is a very good synergies, because the non-profits can really build the capacity of the region in a ways, can build the overall awareness and the mindset of solutions, and that really smoothens for enterprises to come into the system and then sort of scale the solutions. Again, maybe a slightly longer answer, Madhav, than you're looking for, or a different answer, but yeah, that's some of the thoughts that I have.
No, thanks, Mirik. I think a lot of the entrepreneurs who are on this call are keen to hear, these kinds of, these things, because I think this really helps them also think about their businesses. So I'm going to call on Ms. Namrata Divakar now. She's the MD of Operations and Marketing at Rayush Natural Fibers. Her innovative research, making aromatic fiber, machines for making aromatic fibers have, are patented, have earned a lot of recognition. And I think, Namrata, I mean, you are also sort of a leader for these, are like a leader for a lot of our entrepreneurs who are going to get into this this fund. Really wanted to ask you, what are the major challenges that you have faced in raising the right kind of capital for early stage? And what has your learning been from this? What can you share with some of the aspiring entrepreneurs who have joined us in this conversation?
First of all, I would like to thanks the WRI and everybody for giving me this opportunity to represent the startups, and I hopefully convey the challenges we are facing. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself as we are the one who are focusing on cultivation of vetiver. So we are promoting vetiver, and vetiver is a proven wonder crop which helps in soil stabilization and increases the soil fertility. So it's a natural way of increasing the soil fertility and soil restoration, land restoration. So this is like a sustainable solution we are developing for farmers and for the users. What our research is to create, we have created a aromatic fiber, which is this fiber is having all the aromatic properties of very good fragrance, stress relieving fragrance for ears. And apart from it, it is having mosquito and insect repellent properties as well. So for this research, it took us around 1 to 2 years, and for commercializing this product and bringing this into the market, from last 2-3 years, we worked hard, and without salary, we were working, pumping in money to, create the prototypes and launch the product in the market. So all kind of whatever grants and funds available for us, we have already most of them we have used for making the prototype and bringing this innovative product in the market. And when the fund this product is really ready after pilot testing and with all the feedbacks, improved product is ready to launch in the market, we are now scarcity of funds. So how to make this product available to the right market? That's the biggest concern, and it needs a lot of money to have early marketing effort. And when we are going to the banks for loans and other schemes, there is a lot of demand for collateral, first of all, higher interest rate. And though there are schemes from government that we can get them without collaterals, but we know that when we are going to bank, there's a strict demand. They can cancel your application without collateral. So collateral is a must. Second thing, higher interest rate, short duration of payment, and apart from it, a lot of paperwork. It needs a lot of time to get those funds. So it's very difficult for us to in fact repay that loan amount in very short duration when we are not even making the profits. We are just launching the product. So it's very difficult for us to arrange funds even for bringing the product in the market. So I think this is revolutionary funds for all these startups, those who are probably listening, I have covered most of the points. I hope so. So I really thank for launching this fund. So let's for us to grow and go ahead.
Thank you very much, Namrata. And again, I mean, hopefully Namrata has responded to your questions, but please feel free to type your questions in the chat box. We'll try to respond to them immediately, and hopefully we will have a little time at the end also to respond, right? So Karthik, Karthik Chandrasekhar is managing partner at Sangam. Karthik has been a partner of ours for the Land Accelerator for a number of years. He basically started Sangam to find a new model to provide early stage support to climate change pioneers. He has led investments in 8 technology startups, bringing game-changing technologies and business models to the market. Karthik, again, I mean, I think, in the context of the restoration economy, what is the role of patient capital, and it's important for businesses, and how is the Harit Bharat Fund going to support it? So can you throw some light and share this with our panelists and partners?
Sure, Madhav, and thank you so much. Whoa, I think I got a bit too excited. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that we are here. It's a big step towards the support that we want to give, right? And
should I maybe I'll go to Anirban and then we'll come to Karthik when he is back. Anirban is
sorry.
Anirban.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
please go ahead. Yeah.
So I think it's a big step forward towards the restoration support that we want to give, right? And at Sangam, I think the way we define restoration is mainly around improving soil health. That includes soil carbon, biodiversity, and then a lot of restoration is location based. So a lot around preserving local community, preserving local cultures, focusing on rural prosperity. Right. And so with the work that we have done with WRI within Sangam, trying to look for the whole idea around restoration, I think what we have found is if you took the entire group of entrepreneurs and put them into a room, there's you will find like bookends, right? So one end is basically startups, which might have technology, and they are struggling in terms of kind of non-dilutive capital for them to initially scale or prove their, beyond the POC money, right? So they'll get grants and other things to kind of prove, but then beyond that, when they want to do their initial sales, they don't seem to have that money that they want. They're not ready for the venture impact investments, right? And then, the other end of the spectrum, which I think is catered to some extent, is like organizations that just need pure working capital, maybe some level of subsidy for capital investment, right? But the majority in the middle want some kind of dilutive capital to grow, but they don't have enough accruals to do that, right? So we need a solution for the majority of the market that's doing restoration work that does not exist today, right? That's the focus for us. And so it's patient, but also flexible capital, right? So focus for us on the restoration, local community-based businesses is basically around focusing on helping them grow to their best potential, right? They're not like kind of these VC investments. They need to grow to their best potential. They become the stalwarts of the restoration economy in their local geographies, right? The other side, technology startups, we want to give them some level of non-dilutive financing to help them figure out the pathway to scale up capital. Maybe it's venture capital, maybe it's impact investment, but basically kind of do that, right? And I think if we can do that, that for most part is going to be what we're going to work on within the Harit Bharat Fund, right? Like what is that non-dilutive financing, which goes beyond, the two things that we always talk about, just pure equity or pure debt, which is mostly working capital debt, and, with the collateral and everything else, right? So can we go beyond those instruments to kind of design financing solutions for the restoration business, understanding the entrepreneur's needs?
Thank you very much, Karthik. And, again, hopefully some questions. So we've talked a lot about financing. I'm going to talk to Anirban Ghosh now. Anirban is the co-lead of Transform Rural India Foundation. Hello, Anirban. He's part of the lead team at Transform Rural India. He's been on the leadership team of Pradhan. Anirban has decades of experience working on basically, bringing together, working with, community managed irrigation, nature, resource-based livelihoods, but also on using technology to do some of these things. He has pioneered an automated bookkeeping system in women's self-help groups. So Anirban, really, I mean, from a perspective of this fund, just if you can share, your experience on facilitating implementation at scale. We heard Mirik also talk about, the need for scale. Of course, India needs everything at scale. But, how do we sort of facilitate convergence? How do we work across civil society groups, businesses and governments? What kind of conditions do we need to create to make that happen? So yeah, please, over to you.
It's interesting. You were saying we had at the peak about 384 people, and we are still have more than 300 people, 350 people right now. And I guess a large number of them would come from the civil society space. And what we are saying as the intent of this fund is not new to civil society. From the 80s, 90s, there have been a lot of work around this space. However, our understanding over the years, having better research, better scientific data, the technical quality of what we are attempting to do under landscape restoration has improved. But the challenge in the Indian context, even in the past when we had these large watershed missions, was the response at scale did not happen. And we actually, the previous regime had created something called a National Rainfed Authority, which was focused to do something of this kind. But unfortunately, the response has not been at that scale. So from my experience and seeing other, efforts both in India and globally, in this system change, this whole business of system change, especially for climate restoration type of work, is at two levels. And many times we are either solving for one or the other. First level, at the community end itself, these are complicated, challenges on the ground. The local communities, the grassroots CBOs on the ground, the panchayats, the front line of the local administration, they have to come together to have a decently technically feasible plan, and B, have the investments to implement the same. But and again, several civil society organizations have triggered these type of decentralized planning and investments into deployment and implementation of those plans. But the second level of challenge is that how does it happen in an entire block, say 125 odd villages, or an entire district, which is about 1,500 to 2,000 villages. How does it happen at that kind of scale? How do we channelize investments which are siloed? And typically a district would have, say, about 1,800 schemes. So how do you map the local system change model which you are creating with communities and panchayat leaders to come up with activities which can make an impact into their village with the siloed schemes and programs of the government? So this matchmaking, this engagement requires simultaneous engagement of deep community connect on the ground and working very closely with the administration, both at the district and state level, because several of the policy parameters and the guidelines need to be tweaked even at a state level. So my experience of having done these kind of things, say one example which we have done with the government of Jharkhand, which is known to be now the flagship program under MG and RHA, the Birsa Harit Gram Yojana. We started small with the Manrega division and the leadership of the Rural Development Department there. Now it is doing 55,000 acres of mango orchards with intercropping of vegetables, largely tribal and smallholder families, and having survival rates of more than 90%, completely tracked and owned by trained village women who are using digital applications to train the tracking. So in my understanding, the few principles which we need to see in terms of the when you are looking at scale up is you need to look at how the technical aspects can be grafted into the government scheme, government business protocols which are there. How do you build capacities at the grassroots of the government functionaries to replicate which civil society has already done at a smaller scale? Third is having a very strong digital based tracking mechanism. And fourth is how do you build ownership of the local leadership at the community-based organizations and the panchayat leadership. So these are some of the critical elements which need to be seen. And I'm very happy that we are launching the Harit Bharat Fund, which brings in small civil society organizations to work with the larger government mechanism to bring that insert strategy which is required to bring scale to this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anirban. And again, at the beginning, Ajita also talked a little bit about capacities. I think these learnings, I think that you talked about from Jharkhand and other places will also be absolutely critical. I think next I would like to talk to Dr. Priya Nagaraj. She's the CEO of Pune Knowledge Cluster. It's a first of a kind, Pune Knowledge Cluster is the first kind of initiative established by the Office of PSA. And PKC currently enables and manages, in addition to many initiatives they're doing on biofuels, green hydrogen, on automotive technologies, other things, it is currently also managing and enabling initiatives in urban and peri-urban forestry and the restoration space. This also includes use of technology to track and monitor saplings, build sustainable models for large-scale afforestation, creation of carbon sinks. So Dr. Priya, I think, really you're clearly playing this role of system orchestration and, from your experiences, how can this initiative sort of support the ecosystem creation? Also, I think what you are learning is, in your other initiatives, how can that learning be brought to this group to build the capacities that are needed for us also to drive this at scale? So over to you.
Thanks, Madhav. It's a pleasure to be here. It's also a pleasure to be part of this team that is going to implement the Harit Bharat Fund. I must begin by saying that every aspect of this fund or its structure is collaborative. And in the way that we are using pooled finances, and the way that organizations like us who are on this forum today are collaborating to implement this fund. And of course, the many, many organizations that will benefit, whether it's startups or civil societies as well as NGOs from this fund per se. To answer your question, I think if we were to just trace back a little bit, about 40% of India's geographical landscape is highly degraded, it's also water scarce, and also keeping in mind that most of these lands are located in the central and western regions of India, which is also proposed regions for interventions through the Harit Bharat Fund. We also have some very, very tall claims to live up to from the commitments that the government of India has made for our climate change goals. And I think it's really impossible to achieve all of this if we don't work collaboratively and we don't work at scale. And working at scale more so often involves bringing together various organizations, making them see collective benefits, making them see collective reason in being able to, invest all their resources to achieve something that is larger than what they can do by themselves or what they can do individually. And I believe that this fund, in addition to everything else that it offers, I think also will ensure that such collaborative projects are built between various types of organizations. As PKC, we have enabled large projects which bring together organizations with diverse backgrounds, governance structures together, and help them see this sort of collective common understandings of goals, roles, and responsibilities. And we intend to bring that element to this fund also. We also bring a very strong element of the science and technology organizations associated with Pune Knowledge Cluster, which are national, not just regional. And they bring in a lot of expertise in the scientific rigor and how a lot of these models can be built and established. Through them, there will be a lot of mentorship offered to the organizations that are part of this initiative. And also, we bring in a very strong monitoring and evaluation component to the program itself, which is very, very essential in understanding the metrics of how this program will be evaluated. Also, to add a little bit to what one of my fellow panelists spoke about I think over a period of time in building such initiatives, we've realized that in more so often cases, it's not about the lack of funding. I think there is money. I think many a times structuring that money into frameworks that actually benefit organizations, which could mean instruments through which this money actually reaches these organizations, which actually benefits them in the way they want, is very important. And I believe that through this fund, we will achieve that. We will learn about the instruments that actually work for various types of organizations and ensure that money actually is given in ways and forms, in ways that organizations can accept and also implement projects using this money. So really looking forward to, in many ways, a first of its kind like us, is the Harit Bharat Fund, a very collaborative project, and really looking forward to implementing this project with all of you and for all of you on this forum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Priya. So, that sort of brings us to the end of this conversation with all our partners. There are a couple of questions. So first question is from Gurpriya Singh. We can, I think, take a couple of questions, I think. And her question is that she's keen to know if there's a plan to take, if there are innovations, how will you take them to scale? And, that's one, I think one part, so where solution exists, how do we take them to scale? The other is, what's the plan for sort of demand generation of certain solutions, right? So if we know we need this type of solution, how can we sort of, generate, create the environment for those kinds of solutions? So I think these are two broad questions. Maybe Karthik, you can respond first. Sean, if you want to take a go after that, and if anybody else wants to add.
Sure. I think, the Harit Bharat Fund has a very unique approach in terms of taking the ecosystem alongside an enterprise, right? So there's an opportunity to actually evaluate the ecosystem's desire or ability to absorb a technology. I think, first off, while we want innovation, if there is a innovation that has very little technology risk, we are happy to kind of promote that, right? But that said, we can introduce and we can evaluate, but that's up to the enterprises and the entrepreneur to build on that in terms of taking that to scale, and we will provide that financial support to kind of scale up, right? And it's very important that entrepreneurs take on the responsibility to sell and to build their organizations, and we can provide all the support in terms of making that happen.
Sean?
Thanks, Madhav. Yeah, I agree with Karthik entirely, and only to encourage folks to apply for a pretty wide range of innovations. Like we were looking at the Africa portfolio that we had, and we were looking at about 350 different companies that we were working with, either through the Land Accelerator or through a fund that's very, very similar to this one. And out of those 350 companies, they were involved in 91 different commodities that they were producing. And so there is quite a diversity in terms of, what you can produce from a restored area. And so just really encourage folks to think creatively, think innovatively, think about what's needed in these areas, and also to think through, in a lot of the projects that we've seen in Africa so far, there's actually a variety of different types of restoration included in one project being put forward. So that project might have assisted natural regeneration in a certain area to improve biodiversity and outcomes there. They may be producing a commodity in another area to bolster incomes and generate revenue. And then there might be another area that's conserved within that area as well. And so we've seen almost, within project areas, a bit of a landscape approach as well, balancing those benefits to people, nature and to climate. So really encourage people to think creatively. Also encourage, I've seen some questions in the chat, also encourage folks to partner as well. You don't have to do this alone. If you find that there's an organization that complements you well, consider partnering with them and putting a joint application in as well. So we encourage creativity, and we, as Karthik mentioned, we're here to help you scale. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you once again to all the panelists, I think, for your partnership and also for your very articulate responses. I'm going to hand it back now to Kavita. She's going to walk you through the application process. So, if you're an applicant, if you wish to apply, please stay on for the rest of the session. So over to you, Kavita.
Thank you, Madhav. Thanks for your proactive support in organizing the panel discussion as well as for launching this event. And now for the next 30 minutes, we are going to take the applicants. Some of them are, I'm assuming they are in the audience right now. So we'll take you through the overall framework of the expression of interest. What are the different sections of the expression of interest, how you can access the EOI and submit your response. And I would like to co-organize this session with my colleague, Shrishti Kochar, Program Manager, Sustainable Landscapes and Restoration at WRI-India, and Will Anderson, Manager, Restoration Projects, World Resources Institute. Over to you, Shrishti.
Thank you so much, Kavita, and thank you to all our panelists and speakers for such an intriguing panel discussion, as well as your presentations prior to this. Like Kavita said, this session will be focused largely on a walkthrough of the application itself. So this is intended at potential applicants. Whoever is interested in receiving this information, please stay on. Just want to say in Hindi as well, हम आपके आभारी हैं कि आप हमारे साथ आज यहाँ मौजूद रहे और आगे की जो भी निधि रहेगी वो एप्लीकेशन के ऊपर आधारित रहेगी. तो जिसे भी इसको इस इंफॉर्मेशन में इंटरेस्ट है वो प्लीज ऑनलाइन रहे. हमारे chat box में we've been getting a lot of questions in the chat box about who is eligible for Harit Bharat Fund, and we wanted to clarify that any project that is applying for Harit Bharat Fund must be located in Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh or Maharashtra. This means that any organizations that are active in any other states, but that intend to scale their work to these target states are also eligible to apply. So for instance, if you currently work in Karnataka, but want to propose a project that is based in Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh or Maharashtra, we would encourage you to please go ahead and apply. Applicants can request for funding between 20 lakh rupees to 2.5 crore rupees. We would encourage you to tailor your funding ask based on the interventions and the project that you're proposing, which also includes your geographical size. Please note that there will be a negotiation on your ask depending on the review of your project. Also, it is important here to also flag that we are accepting two kinds of applications. One from non-governmental organizations, from NGOs. NGOs can apply for grants. We are also accepting applications from for-profit organizations, which include startups and farmer producer companies. Startups are entities that have not exceeded 10 years from their date of incorporation or have not exceeded a turnover of 100 crores in any of their previous fiscal years. Finally, the project must be locally led in a manner that it demonstrates that it both involves as well as extends benefits to local communities and ecosystems. The way to submit your application and to access your application is through the Manthan platform as well as the TerraMatch platform. We will be talking about this a little bit further on in the presentation. Applications are open now. This was a launch session, and we are now officially open to receive applications from prospective organizations. Applications are open till 20th September 2023. We also wanted to flag that we will be extending funding to at least 20 organizations in the first round, and this will also, of course, increase as we go along to future funding rounds. On the timeline itself, today is the day that we launched the application. Expressions of interest are open till 20th September. The expression of interest is a fairly brief application form wherein we essentially are assessing your eligibility for the application depending on the several criteria that I just outlined. After this, For a period of about 2 weeks, we will be reviewing all of the expressions of interest that have come in, and we will notify applicants if they have managed to pass on to the next stage, which is the request for full proposals. This is going to be a much more detailed application where we will get into the details of the sort of intervention that your organization is proposing, its history, working in these 3 target states, how it mobilizes and works for local communities, particularly minorities such as scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other minorities, other marginalized communities, including women. 2nd November is when the request for proposals closes. We would encourage everyone to please put in their request for proposals into the system by 2nd November, after which there will be a full review of the proposals, and shortlisted applications will be invited for selection interviews until the 20th of December. The next couple of months will go into final reviews and shortlisting the applicants that will receive funding, and we will announce the final results in March 2024. Please visit www.india.terramatch.org for detailed information. There is all of this information along with several frequently asked questions available for your reference there. This is a question that we have also been receiving on how do we vet applications. We provide personalized feedback to every applicant, irrespective of whether or not your application to Harit Bharat Fund has been successful. We believe that this is an important way for us to be able to help you build your own capacities for future funding rounds. So please expect a full review as well as feedback, even if your application does not pass muster for the next stage. There will be at least 2 people reviewing each application, and there is a team of experts that has been specially designated for this purpose to review these applications. Like I already said, all applications will be notified by 4th October if they move on to the request for proposal round. Some of the selection criteria, and these are broadly the principles along which we will assess applicants, and we would encourage you to build this into your application at several stages. There are also targeted questions for these 5 selection criteria, but even in others, if you feel that you can build in some of these selection criteria into your answers, we would highly encourage that. The 5 criteria are on organizational management, on environmental and ecological impact, on social impact, on a monitoring, reporting and verification framework, as well as on project design, which includes considerations around the sustainability of the project, the scalability of the project, and the replicability of the project. Additionally, for for-profits, we will also be assessing profitability, uniqueness and innovation, traction, and special criteria related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Any further questions, any detailed questions on this, please feel free to put them down in the Q&A box and my colleagues will assist you. But we would again highly encourage you to highlight any responses pertaining to these 5 selection criteria in your application. Examples of what we fund. This is a question we've been receiving in the chat as well. And as you know, landscape restoration is a very wide-ranging phenomenon that seeks to reconcile both conservation as well as development imperatives in a particular landscape. So this can include a wide variety of interventions that are targeted and tailored to that particular landscape. So this can range from things like sustainable agriculture to watershed development to bamboo plantation, wadi, which is agri-hortiforestry, trees on bunds and boundaries, riverbank plantations. This is not an exhaustive list. We understand that there are certain models that are prevalent locally. And if you believe that this aids restoration efforts in that particular target geography, we would request you to please explain and apply accordingly. Also, important to flag, there was a question in the Q&A around One Health approaches. So we would highly recommend that any approach that targets the interlinkages between ecosystems and human society, the interlinkages between nature, society, between ecosystems, ecosystem services, livelihoods, etc. We would highly encourage applications of that nature to please apply. Now, moving on to the actual expression of interest itself. Expressions of interest are available through 2 platforms. One is the Manthan platform and one is the TerraMatch platform. On the left is the TerraMatch platform, and on the right, you can see a screenshot from manthan.gov.in, which is under the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office. Starting with, with TerraMatch, you please go to www.india.terramatch.org. And you're already here for the launch webinar, so we'll get into some of the details around how to apply for Manthan via Manthan. Please access www.manthan.gov.in. Under opportunities, you will find Harit Bharat Fund. You will have to create an account and then log in, after which you can access the Harit Bharat Fund program page. Within the program page, there will be a link that will take you to the TerraMatch platform, which is where applications are to be submitted. So applications can be accessed through Manthan, but must be submitted on terramatch.org. And we'll take you through exactly how to do that slightly later as well. And then that is essentially how that works. Just to give you a brief sense of how Manthan works, once you log in, once you access the website, you can go under opportunities, you will find Harit Bharat Fund, after which you'll be requested to register by creating an account, and then you can access the details in the description of the Harit Bharat Fund, which can then be submitted through india.terramatch.org. Going to TerraMatch, which is where essentially all applications must be submitted through. That's the platform through which we're accepting applications. Please go to www.terramatch.org. The first thing that you will be required to do is to create an account. This is the sort of sign up link that will be in front of you. You'll have to put in basic details around your name, your job title, your phone number, email address, and password. Once you have signed up to terramatch.org, you will receive a verification code in your email address. The moment you have verified your application to TerraMatch, you will be asked to then join an existing organization or create a new organization. If you find your organization name already registered on TerraMatch, please select that specific organization. If not, please click on Create Organization and add the details of your organization, which the platform will sort of automatically accept. The moment that's done, you have to sign in. You're signed in. You need to essentially click on Harit Bharat Fund. That's the project that will show up that you're interested in applying for. And the moment you do that, it'll take you through the expression of interest form. There is no proposal, there's no format that you need to download. All the information must be uploaded onto the TerraMatch platform directly. So all of the information is available there. The forms and questions are all available there. They just need to be filled out. And that's it. Once you have confirmed your submission, we will receive your submission at our backend. We will review it and we will get back to you on whether or not you have proceeded to the next stage. So just to take you back, essentially go to terramatch.org, create your account, verify your email address, either join an existing organization if it's listed or create your own organization, start your application once you have completely signed up, and submit and wait. That's essentially the process through which the application will work. The form itself, the expression of interest form, will give you a sense of what it looks like and what are the key headers under which we will be taking applications. But before that, it's important to bear in mind that there are separate applications for NGOs and for for-profits. So if you're a non-governmental organization, please click on the tab on the left, which says non-profits. If you are a for-profit organization, which is a startup or a farmer producer company, please click on the tab on the right, which says enterprises. Once you have clicked on each of these tabs, you will be taken to the application form. The form contains information. The form will ask you for information on the following, or on the criteria on your screen. There's a general organizational information which asks for your name, your registrations, your basic sort of due diligence and due registration details. Then there will be information around the governance, how your organization is structured, your board members, and some of those details. Then the application will ask you for your past community engagement experience. And this is paramount because if you would remember, in our selection criteria, social impact is one of the key parameters upon which we will assess application. So we would request you to be as detailed as possible when you describe your past community engagement experience, particularly in these 3 states. We will then ask for information on your financials and business model, which will essentially include audited financial statements for the past 3 years and some other information, which I'll take you through in the next slide. Then there will be a section on your past restoration experience. So this includes hectares restored in the past. It includes land use systems you have worked in the past. It includes restoration interventions you have employed in the past, the amount of trees you have planted in the past, for instance, and so forth. And then finally, we will ask you about your proposed project. So what is it that you're seeking to do? What is the scale of the project? Who are the targeted intended beneficiaries of that project? What are some of the interventions that you are seeking to implement through the project? What is your financial ask? What ecosystems you're seeking to restore, etc. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is just to give you a sense of some of the parameters upon which the expression of interest requires you to submit information. And then there is just additional information that we are asking for organizations that are interested in receiving capacity building support. For example, we would like you to highlight exactly what kind of capacity building you're seeking, so that then we can devise, we can tailor capacity building programs accordingly, like the panelists said in the past as well. This is just details on the finance and business model, because we anticipated that this is something people might be interested in knowing. So for NGOs, we would require you to enter your total budget for the past 3 fiscal years and the audited financials for all 3 years. For for-profits, we will be requesting you to enter your total revenues for the past 3 fiscal years, which does not include grant funding, and then also your financial documentation for the past 3 years as well. We would request that NGOs ask for less than 100% of your highest annual operating budget, and for-profits ask for less than 60% of your highest annual revenues. Just to flag, all questions have supporting help text along with them. So anytime you feel that there is not adequate information, or if the question itself is not self-explanatory, there will be help text that will guide you through exactly how to answer the question and exactly what information we're seeking. So please don't feel like you are not receiving assistance. Apart from the help text, we have a help center which has dedicated frequently asked questions. Some of those are available on your screen. We will link all of these in the chat and you can access these, but these essentially include in-depth questions, answers to frequently asked questions, a lot of which we were already seeing in the chat. So we are available to support you, not just through the FAQs, but we're also available live. So if you have any questions that you feel are not adequately answered, either in the expression of interest or in the frequently asked questions, you can either contact us on WhatsApp through the number on the screen. You can also email us your questions at info@terramatch.org, and somebody from our team will make sure to revert to you at the earliest to take you through your application. We also have 2 upcoming Ask Me Anything sessions. These will also be conducted in Hindi. So for folks who might be interested in attending those, these are going to be organized on 7th and 15th September from 5 to 6 p.m. We will put the link to register in the chat, and whoever is interested can join. That will be an open session where we will be taking questions and answers from folks who are having trouble accessing any sections of the application or any other questions related to the fund itself. That's it from us. That was the walkthrough that we had for you. I will stop sharing my screen if there are any questions that we want to take at this point. Kavita, if you wanted to come in.
Thanks, Shishti. Thanks for explaining the overall EOI. Again, I would like to highlight the timeline through which the EOI can be accessed and also can be submitted. So you can access the EOI from today itself on both Manthan as well as on TerraMatch. And the deadline to submit your expression of interest is 20th of September. We will continue to remind you to access the EOI and submit your response through our reminder emailers and our follow-up posts on social media. All of the partners are also going to share with you the reminders for completing your EOIs on social media. So if you have any follow-up question for us, do let us know, or feel free to text us in the chat box. Would you like to share some additional information with the applicants present over here with us?
Sure. I'm happy to share my own perspective on this. First off, thank you to the whole team in India for working on this wonderful program. It's wonderful to see. My name is Will Anderson. I am the Terra Fund Manager at the World Resources Institute. And as my colleague Sean DeWitt was saying earlier today, we've launched a similar fund in Africa, and we're really excited to be launching this fund in India, led by my colleagues on the screen here, which I'm really excited about. My recommendations for applications after having looked through about 4,000 of these myself over the last couple of years is the following. Write as much information as you think is necessary. We don't know anything about your organization. So if you don't provide us that information, there's no way that we're going to be able to assess it effectively. So please provide all the information. Also, don't hesitate to ask questions. We guarantee you that if you ask us a question over the next week or 2 weeks, we will respond to it within 48 hours. And what we'll do is that when we see consistent applications, we'll update our Zendesk support center with that information. And we found this extremely helpful. Before you ask a question, look through that support center, read through the articles. There's not too many of them to familiarize yourself. I saw a lot of questions in the chat here that were outside of what we already have on Zendesk. So please ask those. We're going to go after this webinar and update some of the content with some answers that you might not have received during this webinar, but that we know we have to have a policy for. I also wanted to say, we're seeing a lot of questions on consortium applicants right now. And we understand that a lot of organizations like to work together, and that's wonderful. We know restoration, as we've seen in the call here today from our many partners in this initiative, can't ever just be achieved by one organization working on the ground. There's an entire ecosystem of people and actors that are working on this. So we'd recommend that one organization applies as the main organization that will be responsible for the project receiving funds. That organization should be the organization that is doing the restoration work on the ground, directly working with farmers, with community members, etc. Other partners are absolutely eligible to be a part of that larger consortium. However, the money should go to one organization, and it should be the organization that does the work on the ground. If you do work with partners, we will ask you throughout the process for additional details on how you work with those partners, how much money is going to those partners, what experience do those partners have. So if you do have partners in your application, say who they are, say what their roles are, and then later throughout the process, if you make it to the next round, we will ask you additional questions on that. So try and be as simple and as clear as possible, and we will try and be as simple and as clear as possible back to you. My last piece of advice would be that please be diligent when you're answering the questions. If you think that you could just benefit from taking a pause for an hour, asking someone their advice, or asking your accountant for better financial documentation, it's absolutely worth it. So please, please, please take the time necessary over the next 16 days to get the information in. At the same time, please do not wait until the last day to submit your application. And the reason why is because we are less able to respond to your questions and less able to help you with technical challenges if you wait until September 20th to apply. I cannot guarantee you that if you wait to even start your application until that date, that we will be able to provide the kind of support that we want to provide for you. So please help us help you by not applying on the final day. If you do apply on the 18th, wonderful. There's still opportunities for you to ask us questions, etc. So we are here for you. We have a whole team of people based in India, in East Africa, in West Africa, and in the United States that are ready to provide questions and support for you. And that's our dedication. So over back to you, Kavita and Shrishti.
Thanks, Will. I would again reiterate the applicants to not to hesitate in sharing any of the questions, concerns, or any difficulty which you might face in accessing the EOI. We hope you find the EOI really useful, crisp, and most of the questions in the EOI would help us assess your eligibility for the fund. And we have tried to provide you the enabling help text so that you are able to provide us the correct information. We are also going to organize two Ask Me Anything sessions, AMAs, about which my colleague Shrishti briefed. So we are looking forward to provide additional information through these AMAs on 7th and 15th. You can register for the AMAs right now. The link is going to be shared with you in the chat box. To register for the Ask Me Anything sessions, we are also going to conduct the same in Hindi language. And we are looking forward to a lot of questions, calls, concerns from your end, and we are ready to support you. As Will has also shared, our team is there to support you and make you confident in submitting your EOI before the last date. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And we are looking forward to have another rounds of interaction with all the potential applicants through the AMAs, which we are organizing in the upcoming 2 weeks. Thank you, everyone. Thank you once again for joining this virtual launch ceremony of Harit Bharat Fund. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.